So I wanted to take a couple minutes and walk through the plan for the assessments this quarter. So, as you know, this is a little bit of an interesting time with the whole COVID crisis going on. And so rather than doing the traditional timed exam where everybody's under the gun, I thought I would give a variant of a take home exam slash oral exam for each of you under the heading of an assessment, a weekly assessment. And so there are two basic parts to the assessment. The first is a paper and pencil portion. And so I put together a list of 10 questions that I would like you to work ideally on your own, but it's okay to collaborate with people. It's okay to use your resources. My goal is that you would understand all the questions on the assessment, that you would be able to work all of them, and um, and come to a full understanding. It's just the more you work on your own, the better you will understand what it is that you are working on. So to make it clear what these questions are, let me just share my screen. So on my web page, I have placed a link to the first assessment. And so you'll see that there are 10 questions. The first one is converting the equations into Cartesian coordinates, find the slope of tangent lines, et cetera, et cetera. These particular questions are coming from two places. They're coming from the DIY assignments and also the 16.3 assignment on double integrals with polar coordinates. Ideally, you would print out this worksheet, work the questions by hand, and then Monday morning by 8 a.m. upload to Gradescope. You could also work these on a tablet if you have that and upload to Gradescope again on Monday. If you don't have a printer and you don't have a tablet, then feel free to copy the questions by hand. If you do so, please make sure that you clearly mark which question you're working on so that it'll be easy for me to understand what you're doing. Ideally laying them out in a similar fashion to that which is on the handout. Should extra pages be needed, feel free to add those at the end. If you do that, please make a little note that might say something along the lines of, see, extra paper, something along those lines. Extra maybe at end, and then make sure that you clearly label those notes. So the first part is working through all of these questions by hand. In case you're wondering where these questions came from, all of the questions on this first assignment are straight off of your homework. All the questions on this first assessment are straight off of your first homework assignments. And that's because I want you to be able to focus in on understanding and not be too worried about whether you're getting the right answers, because you'll have already worked through these questions at least once. So you'll submit these into Gradescope, and then on Monday, you will have a 5-minute presentation time appointment with me. There may be some of your peers in the Zoom room, or there may not, sort of depends on their interest. And during that time, I will pull up a question. So I might say, hey Jane, hey John, could we look at question 1.3? And I'll just randomly assign a question. I'm going to have a random number generator. And so I'll assign a question to you, and I'll pull up your notes that you'll have submitted to me, and I'll say, could you spend a minute and just walk me through your solution? And then maybe I might ask a question like, could you explain to me how you set up your limits of integration? Or could you explain to me why you chose such and such as your differential? Or could you explain such and such integration step? And so I'll be looking at your work and asking you to explain your work. It's at this stage that I'm really trying to assess how much you understand. Is kind of in that presentation. In terms of the grade, half of the grade is from submitting the paperwork online. About 20% is in presentation. So are you clear? Are you concise? Does what you say make sense? Are you able to articulate things? And then 30% will be on the math. So is what you're saying true, for lack of a better way of saying it from a mathematical standpoint. 50% on the paper, 20% on presentation, 30% on the math content. You might ask, when are we supposed to present? And I am so glad you asked that question. So let me again share my screen. So I've created a Google Sheet here with a whole bunch of time slots that you can fill in. And so, for example, I'm kind of a morning person, and so I might say that, yes, I'm interested in presenting right at the top. I just want to get it out of the way. But if I can't have that, then I'd like to do it and just have it done. I'll come in here and put a second slot in at midway through the 10 o'clock hour. 10:10 is nice. That's the time slot for the golden ratio, at least on an analog clock. Google it if you're interested. And third pick, well, if need be, I could do it right before lunch, and I'll just put it off, and maybe I could watch a couple other people's presentations and see what it all looks like. You might ask, what's all this ketchup, mustard, and buffer about? I decided to put some extra lines in there because I figure some of these presentations might go long, and so I put in some ketchup space in case things go long and we need to get back on track. The buffer, this is the time in between classes. Ketchup is, of course, a pun, and if you have ketchup, you may as well have mustard. So that's the joke. So my plan is to release this schedule to you right after class here at 10 a.m. And again, you can fill in a first pick, a second pick, and a third pick. Ideally, you'd pick one from each hour, but I know some of you have classes at those hours, and so I totally respect that you might not have as much flexibility as I do. Just if you do have flexibility, I'd appreciate it if you could give me some. That way everybody can have a chance to present. If nothing works, then we can deal with those on a case-by-case basis if all the important slots fill up for you. But we'll deal with that later. So again, the simple way of describing it is there's some questions for you to work on over the weekend. All of these are coming from the homework. Work them carefully, work them by hand, make sure your notes are good. Upload those Monday morning, and then be ready to spend 5 minutes presenting on one of those questions at the time that you've picked out. Once the schedule is finalized, I will email that out, or I'll send that out by Slack as well. So I hope that helped. I hope that helps you understand what to expect. I'm really excited about these presentations, but I've never done this before myself as an instructor, and so I'm excited to be able to experiment with this with all of you and probably work out the bugs as the weeks progress. I hope that helps you understand, and I look forward to seeing you all in class soon. Take care.